Hi there, I'm Nava. I went to my sister's for New Year's thinking it would be a fresh start, but instead she left me alone with a man I barely knew. It wasn't just a holiday ruined, it uncovered years of lies, betrayal, and the kind of cold-hearted cruelty you don't see coming until it's too late. How did it all spiral so far? And what did I have to lose to finally break free? The drive to Ludlow had felt endless. Thick flakes clung stubbornly to the windshield as I wound through silent, frozen roads, each mile harder to bear than the last. I had imagined arriving to the glow of warm lights, the clink of glasses, the hum of laughter. But when I pulled into Marcia's driveway, the house sat dark and lifeless under a gray, heavy sky. I parked, engine ticking in the cold, and stared. No lights, no wreath, not even a shovel clearing the walkway. A hollow feeling gnawed at my chest. I gathered my bag, boots crunching through untouched snow, and rang the doorbell. Once, twice. Nothing. My hand shook slightly as I tried the door. It creaked open without resistance. Inside, the air was stale. No scent of roasting ham, no cinnamon candles, no music. Just silence, thick, almost accusatory. I called out, voice too loud in the stillness. "Marcia? Alaric?" No answer. Heart pounding, I stepped into the living room. Empty couch, cold fireplace, one thin lamp on the side table flickering. I moved to the kitchen, and that's when I saw it. A scrap of paper crooked on the granite counter, weighed down by a coffee mug. "Gone on a quick trip. You'll be fine. Take care of Alaric." That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just a tossed-off note, like abandoning a pet at a neighbor's house. My mouth went dry. I read it twice, 3 times. It didn't make sense. We had planned this for weeks, our first real New Year's together since Dad died. I had trusted her. My hand fumbled for my phone. I called Marcia, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Again. No answer. Panic clawed up my throat. I opened the messaging app, scrolling through our last conversation. Brief, distracted replies. My thumb hovered over her Instagram icon, dread pooling in my stomach. The newest post hit me like a slap. There she was, in a shimmering gold dress, laughing, glass raised high against the sparkling New York skyline. Captioned, "New Year, new beginnings # living my best life. Alaric nowhere in sight." For a second, I just stood there, phone trembling in my hand. Then the hurt gave way to something sharper, meaner. She hadn't forgotten me. She hadn't been too busy. She had planned this, left me here in the freezing dead of winter with her ailing husband while she toasted to new beginnings. I set the phone down, my fingers numb from more than just the cold. The betrayal sat heavy in my chest, a raw, ugly weight. The house wasn't just empty. It felt abandoned, like a forgotten promise. I clutched my coat tighter as I stepped further inside, realizing I was completely alone with a man I barely knew. The heavy front door groaned shut behind me, cutting off what little sound the outside world offered. For a few moments I just stood there, trying to decide whether to run or stay. The house was even colder than it looked. Ice crept along the insides of the windows like pale veins. I wrapped my arms around myself and called out again, my voice cracking in the stale air. "Alaric? It's Nava." Still no response. I moved cautiously from room to room, turning on lights that buzzed weakly, illuminating spaces that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. The kitchen was a disaster. An open cereal box spilled across the counter, a dirty plate sitting in a pool of something unidentifiable. The refrigerator groaned when I opened it, revealing only a half-empty jar of mayonnaise and a shriveled lemon. Upstairs I heard it, a faint sound, a cough. Reluctantly, I followed it to a half-open door. Inside, Alaric lay on an unmade bed, a thin blanket tangled around him. He looked smaller somehow, deflated. His once proud shoulders now slumped, his cheeks sunken. His eyes flickered open when I stepped closer. "You're not her," he rasped. "No," I said softly, trying not to show the panic rising inside me. "I'm Neva, Marcia's sister." He gave a tired snort, almost a laugh, before turning his face toward the wall. I stood there, awkward and unsure, before backing out and pulling the door gently shut. I needed to figure out what supplies we had. Moving back downstairs, I dug through cabinets, expired soup cans, Bottles of vitamins well past their date. No bread, no milk, no anything. Anger simmered just below the surface. What kind of sister abandons her sick husband days before New Year's? What kind of human being? Determined not to crumble, I made a mental list. In the morning, I'd drive into town, find groceries, essentials. Tonight, I'd make do. I searched the drawers for any clue about what else might be wrong. In the kitchen desk, among the unpaid bills and crumpled receipts, I found a sticky note labeled Savings Account. My chest tightened. Against my better judgment, I pulled out my phone, logging into the online banking portal using the password Marcia had given me months ago. Just in case, she'd said, with a careless laugh. What I saw made me gasp. The balance was almost zero. Scrolling through recent transactions, my heart sank deeper. Luxury hotel bookings, designer boutiques, high-end spa services, all charged within the last 2 weeks. This wasn't just neglect. This was betrayal. This was theft. Somewhere between the empty fridge and the empty bank account, something inside me snapped. I sat down hard on the cold kitchen floor, feeling the weight of everything settle onto my chest. The air was heavy with the stale scent of neglect, and the thin gray light squeezing through the frosted windows made the place feel even more abandoned. I pulled my knees to my chest, staring at the cracked linoleum beneath me, wondering how the woman I called my sister could have orchestrated this so easily and so cruelly. Dragging myself up after what felt like hours, I shuffled through the kitchen cabinets. I found a half-eaten box of saltines, 2 expired cans of beans, and little else. I managed to brew a weak pot of coffee, the kind that tasted more like regret than caffeine. As I sat at the small kitchen table blowing on the hot, bitter liquid, I heard faint footsteps upstairs. Alaric appeared at the top of the staircase, one hand gripping the rail tightly. His face was pale, his cheeks hollowed. I stood up immediately, unsure if I should run to help him or keep my distance. Slowly, he made his way down, every step an effort. When he finally reached the bottom, he looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. "She's not coming back," he said, his voice rough as sandpaper. I nodded, swallowing the knot forming in my throat. I know. He shuffled toward the living room and sank into the old armchair near the fireplace, one that hadn't seen a flame in who knew how long. I followed cautiously, unsure if he wanted company. "She started small," Alaric said, staring into nothing. "Taking a little here, cutting corners there. At first it was easy to ignore. I told myself she was stressed, tired." He let out a humorless laugh. Then the doctor's appointments started getting missed. My checks, they stopped going to my account. When I asked, she said I was forgetful, getting old, made me doubt myself. I listened, the pieces clicking into place. Marcia hadn't just abandoned him now. She'd been abandoning him slowly for years, isolating him, breaking him down. The more he spoke, the more I felt something dark and familiar stir inside me. I hadn't thought about it in years, but suddenly the memory was vivid. I was 12, clutching a crumpled math test in my hands, Marcia towering over me with a sneer. "If Mom and Dad find out, it's on you," she had hissed. "You're the screw-up, not me." And when the inevitable confrontation came, Marcia's lies flowed smoothly. I had taken the blame, because who would believe me over her? Somewhere deep down, I had known then what she was capable of. I just hadn't wanted to see it again until it was staring me in the face now, through Alaric's hollow gaze. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, something inside me shifted, like a tectonic plate grinding into a new, immovable position. This wasn't just about Marcia leaving for New Year's. This was about years of betrayal. Patterns disguised as accidents. Cruelty disguised as carelessness. I sat back in the chair across from Alaric, my fingers curling into fists against my thighs. I had stayed quiet once before. I wouldn't make that mistake again. Armed with new clarity, I began to look more closely at everything Marcia had tried to hide. The weak afternoon light crept through the frosted windows, casting long, cold shadows across the floor as I moved from room to room, my hands steady but my heart pounding. In the living room, I noticed the bills stacked neatly but unpaid on the side table. Some envelopes were torn open, others were hidden beneath magazines, almost as if someone had tried to bury them in plain sight. Heating bills, medical invoices, late notices. My fingers traced over the dry paper, each one a whisper of neglect. Determined, I made my way upstairs. The master bedroom smelled of stale perfume and something sourer. Defeat. I pulled open the closet doors. Inside, I found empty designer shopping bags crumpled at the bottom, expensive brands that Marcia could never have afforded without help. Help she didn't earn. In the corner of the room stood a battered oak desk. I rifled through its drawers, pushing past old receipts and meaningless trinkets. At the very back, tucked beneath a false bottom, I found a thin folder. When I opened it, my breath caught. Forged medical documents, pages and pages claiming that Alaric had been declared mentally incompetent years ago. Doctor's notes that seemed suspiciously typed, not handwritten. Signatures that looked identical across multiple documents. And worse, a notary stamp that, when I checked later, didn't even exist. She had been preparing for this for a long time. Each document screamed premeditation. Marcia hadn't simply abandoned her husband. She had plotted to erase him, to claim everything he had left without anyone questioning it. The rage boiled inside me, not wild, but focused, sharp like a blade. I snapped photos of everything with my phone, making sure to capture every damning piece of evidence. Back downstairs, I moved into what must have been Alaric's study once, though now it was a sad, forgotten room. In a dusty corner cabinet, I discovered a draft letter addressed to Adult Protective Services. My hands shook as I read it. In heartbreaking detail, Alaric had described the slow theft of his independence, the emotional abandonment, the manipulation, but the letter was unsent, a silent scream trapped on paper. I imagined him sitting here, broken, but still trying to fight for himself, and being too isolated to follow through. A heaviness settled into my chest, but I didn't let it weigh me down. Marcia hadn't counted on anyone caring enough to dig this deep. She hadn't counted on me. I gathered the documents carefully, building a new folder, a real one, this time backed by proof, not lies. It was no longer just survival. It was about justice. The first thing I did was draft a message Marcia couldn't ignore. I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the damning evidence I had gathered, my fingers steady on the keyboard despite the blizzard howling outside. I wasn't going to beg or plead. Not anymore. I was going to confront her head-on, strip away the cozy lies she had wrapped herself in. I kept my words brief, but sharp, each sentence a scalpel cutting through her false security. I know what you've done to Alaric. I have proof. We need to talk before things get worse for you. No drama, no threats, just truth, and the unspoken promise of consequences. I hit send. The screen glowed coldly back at me as I waited. It didn't take long. The phone buzzed, and Marcia's name flashed across the screen. For a heartbeat, a tiny, foolish part of me hoped she might show some shame, some regret, maybe an apology, maybe even fear. Instead, her message punched through the fragile air. Oh, please, you're being dramatic. It's just a little money. Alaric can't even tell what day it is anymore. You should thank me for taking care of him all this time. I stared at the words, my stomach twisting. Just a little money? Just a little betrayal? She had drained him dry, crushed his spirit, and now she laughed it off like it was nothing more than a spilled drink at a party. Another text blinked through. Don't get any ideas, Neva. You're not exactly the family hero you think you are. That one landed harder than the first. The Marcia who once held my hand crossing icy sidewalks, who braided my hair before school, was long gone. Maybe she never really existed. Maybe I'd only ever loved the idea of her. I set the phone down slowly, my hands curiously calm. There was no point trading insults over a screen. Words meant nothing to her. She would never understand loyalty or guilt or love, only consequences. Quietly, I gathered the folder of evidence and placed it carefully inside my backpack. I would need it soon enough. There was no use wasting anger on her taunts. I'd channel it into action instead. The clock on the stove blinked 11:45 p.m. 15 minutes until midnight. A new year, a new war. I sat by the window, watching the snow twist violently in the dark. No cheers, no fireworks. Just the storm howling like a living thing outside, trying to tear the world apart. Somewhere across the country, Marcia was probably popping champagne, raising a glass to her own imagined cleverness. But by morning she would learn exactly how wrong she was to underestimate me. I woke before dawn, the storm still raging, and I knew it was time to move. The windows rattled in their frames, and the world beyond was a wall of white. I pulled a heavy sweater over my chilled body and padded quietly into the kitchen, the floorboards creaking under my steps. The power flickered again, casting the room in stuttering shadows. I had no illusions left. The world outside was brutal, but the real storm was happening inside these four walls. I poured a cup of lukewarm coffee from the pot I'd brewed hours ago. As I cradled it between my hands, my phone buzzed, rattling against the counter. I snatched it up, expecting another useless taunt from Marcia. Instead, it was a call. From her. No, not a real call. A pocket dial. I pressed the phone to my ear, heart pounding. I could hear muffled laughter, clinking glasses, and then Marcia's unmistakable voice. "He's practically a vegetable," she sneered. "Another month tops, then it's all mine." Someone, a man, chuckled darkly. "No one's gonna question it. Old guy, bad weather, frail health, easy out." Marcia's voice dripped with venom. "Neva, she's just another bleeding heart. She won't do a damn thing." I stood frozen in the kitchen, each word slicing deeper than any knife. This wasn't about struggling to care for Alaric. This wasn't about being overwhelmed. It was premeditated, cold, calculated. They were planning to let him die, to profit from it. The rage that flared inside me was unlike anything I'd ever known. Not wild, not chaotic. A quiet, steady burn, like iron heated until it glowed. When the call ended, I set the phone down slowly, deliberately. No screaming, no panicked calls back. Instead, I grabbed a notebook and began writing. Names, steps, allies, Agnes next door. She'd seen enough. A lawyer, Sloan, the one I knew from my old job. Adult Protective Services. Mandatory reporters. I would no longer play defense. It was time to go on the attack. The power flickered again, and I glanced toward the living room where Alaric still slept, unaware of the knives aimed at his back. Protecting him wasn't an option. It was a duty. The storm outside raged harder, battering the windows, but inside, something colder, fiercer was taking root. They thought I was powerless. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The first step was finding someone who would believe me, and standing up, even if I had to stand alone. As the storm weakened into a bitter swirling mist, I bundled myself in my thickest coat and made my way next door. Agnes answered almost immediately, squinting against the cold. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, softened when she saw me standing there, clutching the stack of copied documents against my chest. I didn't even get through half my explanation before she cut me off. "I knew something was wrong," Agnes said, her voice low but firm. "I've seen too much. I'll back you up, Nava, whatever it takes." A crack formed in the wall of hopelessness inside me. Finally, someone who didn't think I was crazy or overreacting. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. We sat at her kitchen table as she detailed everything she had noticed over the past year. Missed doctor's appointments, bruises Alaric couldn't explain, Marcia's sudden influx of cash. Agnes agreed to make a full statement. We drafted it carefully, word by word, sealing it like ammunition for the battle ahead. I had barely returned home when I saw the unmistakable flash of Marcia's car coming up the icy drive. She stepped out, dressed in designer winter gear, sunglasses shielding her eyes from the gray sky, as if this were some ski resort and not a battlefield she'd created. I didn't wait for her to come knocking. I stood right on the porch as she approached, the wind tugging at my coat. "You're not getting away with this," I said, my voice steady. She laughed, a cruel, ugly sound. "Oh, sweetheart," she sneered. "You really think anyone's going to listen to you over me? You're wasting your time." She stepped closer, towering over me by a few inches. "You want a war? Fine. But remember, I know how to play dirty," she hissed, low enough that only I could hear. I let her spew her venom while I calmly raised my phone, recording every word. Her smile faltered for half a second before twisting back into a smirk. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I let the silence stretch thick between us. When she finally realized intimidation wasn't working, she spun on her heel and stomped inside, slamming the door behind her. Agnes joined me a few minutes later. Together, we organized the evidence: photos, statements, recordings. "The only thing bullies fear," Agnes said, tapping a neat stack of papers, "is being exposed." By the time she realized the walls were closing in, it would be too late. The next morning, armed with evidence and witnesses, I took the first real step toward ending Marcia's reign of cruelty. I was sipping a lukewarm cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. It was the town clerk, his voice tight. "Marcia filed papers to have Alaric declared mentally incompetent," he said, "early this morning." I froze. She hadn't even waited a full day after returning. Rage simmered just beneath my skin, but I kept my voice even. "Thank you for letting me know. I'll be filing a counter motion today." Without wasting a second, I called Sloan, the tough, no-nonsense lawyer Agnes had recommended. By noon, I was in his cramped office, the air thick with the smell of old paper and burnt coffee. Sloan didn't need much convincing. As he flipped through the forged medical documents, Agnes's affidavit, and photos of the house's neglect, he gave a low whistle. "She's bold, I'll give her that," he muttered, marking pages with sticky tabs. "But she's also sloppy. Let's hit her where it hurts." We filed emergency paperwork, motions to freeze Marcia's access to Alaric's accounts, petitions for a fraud investigation, demands for immediate hearings. By late afternoon, word had spread through the tight-knit town. Ludlow wasn't big, and rumors traveled faster than snowdrifts. At the local diner, heads turned as Marcia breezed in, unaware her charade was crumbling. One woman whispered loud enough for me to hear, "Thought she was the perfect sister. Guess not." The town clerk called again, voice almost gleeful. "That notary she used? He's already denied ever signing anything for her." Piece by piece, the foundation Marcia had built on lies was collapsing. Back at the house, I sat with Agnes and Alaric, laying out the next steps. We would stand together at the hearing. We would testify. There was no fear left in me anymore, only cold, clear purpose. Tomorrow, the world would see Marcia the way I had always seen her. And there would be no more pretending. The hearing was set for noon, and by the end of it, the masks would finally fall away. I stood outside the courthouse, the fresh snow crunching beneath my boots, heart thudding like a drum in my chest. Sloan met me at the steps, his breath fogging in the icy air. Agnes joined us too, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd gathering out of curiosity. Neighbors, townsfolk, even the diner waitress. Inside, the courtroom buzzed low with murmurs as we entered. Marcia sat on the other side, wearing a carefully curated look of concern, her lawyer whispering frantically into her ear. I met her gaze, steady and unflinching. The proceedings began. Sloan moved like a seasoned general, laying out the forged documents first, highlighting the discrepancies, the mismatched signatures, the notary's sworn statements denying involvement. Agnes testified about the years of neglect she had witnessed from next door, her voice firm despite Marcia's icy glare. Piece by piece, the illusion Marcia had built crumbled. When it was her turn to speak, Marcia flailed, contradicting her own statements, blaming clerical errors, even suggesting I had misunderstood everything. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the judge, a weathered man with tired eyes, was not in the mood for games. His gavel struck the bench with a decisive thud. "This court finds the petition for incompetence without merit," he declared. "Further investigation into potential financial misconduct is hereby ordered." Gasps rippled through the small crowd. Marcia's face went pale, then red, then an unsettling mask of anger. Outside, the cold was almost comforting against my flushed skin. I inhaled deeply, the crisp air filling my lungs as we stepped back into the world, no longer trapped in her shadow. Later, back at the house, the atmosphere felt different. The blizzard had cleared, sunlight bouncing off untouched snow. Inside, Alaric napped peacefully, unaware that for the first time in years, he was truly safe. I sat by the window, watching the light shift across the floor, feeling something I hadn't let myself hope for. Peace. it wasn't just about Alaric. It was about all the times I had stayed silent when Marcia twisted the truth. All the moments I let her make me doubt myself. I had fought for him, but in the process, I had fought for me too. The wounds Marcia left behind would not heal overnight. Some scars would stay hidden beneath the surface. But I had chosen not to carry her lies any longer. In the weeks that followed, I started volunteering at a local advocacy group, sharing my story when needed, listening when others needed a voice. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it arrives quietly. But it arrives all the same. When I look back now, standing here after everything, I realize one simple truth. Standing up for what's right, even when you're scared, even when you're standing alone, changes everything. It wasn't easy, it wasn't quick, but choosing courage over silence gave me back not just my dignity, but my life. If there's one thing I can pass on to you, it's this: never let fear decide your future. Justice may not come roaring like a storm, sometimes it whispers, but if you keep pushing forward, it will come, and it will be worth it. No one else can fight for your worth better than you, so fight, and never ever let anyone steal your voice. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to stand alone for something you believed in? If you were in my shoes, would you have made the same choices? Please share in the comments. I read every one of them. It's how we stay strong together. If this story touched your heart, please comment #1 or tell me which state you're watching from. And if you didn't like it, that's okay too. Tell me why. I value every perspective. If you want more real stories about standing strong, finding justice, and healing through hard times, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our community.